The king had a wife, but whispers filled the lands of the Franks. It was no coincidence that he took the young princess into his care. He provided her with the finest residence and hired tutors. The girl from Thuringia was destined to become the next queen. With this wife, the king could easily annul his marriage. Meanwhile, the girl was being prepared for her future role as a ruler, a true wife for growth. Radigund was born in Erfurt around the year 518. The exact date remains uncertain, and it could have been a few years later. She was the daughter of King Berthar, who had unfortunate luck with his brothers. They conspired against him, seizing his personal belongings and his kingdom. The princess was just a small child, no older than 7, so she was spared and allowed to remain in her chambers. However, warlike rulers of the 6th century rarely enjoyed peace for long. Soon, other warriors arrived: Theodoric, king of Austrasia, and Clothar, king of Soissons. The Thuringians tried to fight back, but the Franks proved stronger. A decisive battle took place on the Unstrut River, and power shifted once again. What once belonged to Radigund's father was divided between Theodoric and Clothar. Among the spoils that Clothar claimed for himself was the young princess. The king had a rather peculiar reputation. He first married the daughters of King Worms in succession, then took the widow of his own brother as his wife. It is said that Radigund immediately caught his eye. She had a serious, almost adult gaze, large eyes, and very delicate features. It's likely he decided then and there that he would raise her to be his future wife. For now, she was small, but she would grow into a beautiful queen. To carry out his plan, Clothar settled Radigund at the villa of Adi in Vermandois. She began to learn to read and write. In those days, not every king could do so, and she was taught Latin and other languages, along with household management. The future queen needed to know how to handle servants and where to source resources if her husband commanded a feast. Initially, Radigund was a pagan, like many in Thuringia, but at Adi, she was introduced to sacred texts and began to study them closely, eventually embracing Christianity. Clothar viewed this positively. Since the time of Clovis, the Franks had ceased to worship idols. Understanding the fate that awaited her, Radigund was not particularly thrilled. One might think, who would refuse a crown? However, queens among the Franks changed frequently. A high status did not guarantee a peaceful life. In fact, quite the opposite, and she preferred a quiet, unroyal existence. Clothar sent her golden gifts, but Radigund sighed. What did she need them for? Soon, as Gregory of Tours writes, King Clothar took Radigund as his wife. But one significant detail: Radigund was so reluctant to walk down the aisle that she fled the day before the ceremony. However, this was quickly discovered. She was intercepted on her way to Péronne and returned to Soissons, to the king. The wedding took place as scheduled. Radigund's mourning gift included the estate where she spent her youth, several towns, and chests filled with gold. The newly crowned queen decided to use it all for good causes. First, she opened a hospital for the poor, and then a monastery. Radigund consistently gave generous alms, quickly gaining popularity among the people. However, harmony in her marriage proved elusive. Radigund did not enjoy the festivities her husband indulged in and tried to avoid them. "Did I marry a nun?" Clothar once asked. Radigund remained silent, but continued to fast, wear deliberately simple clothing, and regularly petitioned the king for clemency for the condemned. The king was perplexed. He enjoyed presenting his beautiful young queen to foreign ambassadors and appreciated her intellect, even seeking her advice. But why was she so fervent in her piety? Over the course of 10 years, the couple had no children. Radigund saw this as a sign. It was not meant for her to engage in worldly matters. Eventually, she fled the palace once more. She went directly to Bishop Medid and asked for his help in entering a convent. He hesitated, foreseeing King Clothar's wrath. But Radigund was so insistent that Medid relented. The queen took her vows that very day. Clothar was indeed furious upon learning of his wife's actions. He had spent years cultivating the ideal queen, only for this to happen. He managed to arrange a meeting with Radigund, pleading for her to return, but she simply shook her head in response. But the throne beside Clotaire couldn't remain empty, so he entered into a new marriage, his fifth. Radigund lived for some time in Tours before moving to Poitiers, where she founded a monastery. The biographer of the former queen, Venantius Fortunatus, recorded that Radigund subsisted solely on raw fruits and vegetables until the end of her days. She personally maintained the cleanliness of the convent, ground grain, and spent 2 hours each day copying ancient manuscripts. Fortunatus can be trusted. He recorded these events hot on the trail, having lived alongside Radigund for many years. The Queen of the Franks passed away in August of 587, a date firmly recorded in history. Radigund was later canonized. Her husband, King Clotaire, died many years earlier. He was succeeded by 4 sons from different wives, and like many warlike figures of the 6th century, these heirs were constantly at odds with one another. But that is a completely different story. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, give a like, and thank you for your comments.